I've heard from so many people who have said that they wish that they had the motivation to start something. I've had lots of people say, "Oh, I wish I had your motivation." And I think it's just a really common misconception that you need to be motivated before you can start something. And I think a lot of people think that like one day they're just going to wake up feeling like filled with inspiration and very motivated to start whatever it is that they've been dreaming about, but unfortunately, that's not really the way that it works. And it could start out that way. It could start out that you're excited to take on a new challenge, but motivation isn't always going to be there. And it might be there in the beginning, but as you're kind of going through the motions and taking action, you're going to have moments and days and weeks where you're just not feeling it. If you're wanting to start something and waiting for motivation, a lot of times that can keep you stuck. It looks like waiting for inspiration. It looks like, when I have more time, when I have more money, when I feel particularly inspired. But again, that's really not how it works. You need more than that to keep you going so that you can actually reach the goals that you want to achieve. Just keep in mind that there's never going to be a perfect time to start anything. There are always going to be life things that are happening. Life happens. And so if you're waiting to have more confidence or have more energy or anything like that, it's just not going to happen. You have to take action to make that happen. And then eventually the motivation follows because you have all of this proof behind you that what you're doing is actually working and moving you toward your goal. And that is where the motivation comes from. Now, the problem with motivation is that it's very inconsistent. It ebbs and flows. And some days you're going to feel really motivated, and then other days, maybe not so much. It happens with my running all the time. There are mornings where I just don't feel like going out there. There are even times where I'm like halfway through my run and I'm like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore. But I also know that I'm working towards a goal and I've been doing this for a while. So all of those efforts stack up, and it's just there's no question that I'm going to finish my run even if I don't feel like it. And that's really what it comes down to, is feeling like it. You're not always going to feel like it, and so you need to find other tools to rely on, because if you're only waiting to feel like it to do something, you might be waiting a while, or you might just do things, here and there once a week or once a month, or eventually not at all, because that motivation is just not always going to be there. The really key thing that I want you to take away from this entire video is going to be that motivation isn't usually what comes first. You might have like a spark of inspiration, or you might feel motivated to start something, but that's not what's going to keep you consistent. And that motivation is actually going to build once you've taken action. So it's the action that comes ahead of the motivation and not the other way around. Now, the key here is going to be building momentum. And what builds that momentum are those small, repeated actions over and over and over again. So let's use, I'm going to, instead of using running, because I use it all the time, we're going to use this platform here, my YouTube channel. Now, if you're looking at it right now, which is in mid-May of 2026, I don't have a ton of followers. There's not a lot of engagement. Like, it's still early. I'm only a few months into this. But what you will see is that I have built up a pretty good body of work, and I'm able to pull content from that for other platforms. I can share snippets on my Instagram, my TikTok, my Facebook, all over the place. Because I have started to build this momentum, I'm starting to get eyes on my content all over the place. Again, it's not a lot, but it's something. And so when I sit down to make these videos, there are days where I don't feel like getting on camera. Maybe I'm having a bad hair day, or maybe I don't feel like, making myself look camera ready, or maybe I just don't feel like talking. I mean, that does happen sometimes, but I also know that I am in a state of momentum right now where I'm building this body of work. I'm building this channel up. I'm building my other accounts up as well, and I don't want to lose that momentum. So that is really what's kind of keeping me motivated, along with the fact that my whole intention for starting this channel was to help other women like me to sort of navigate this stage of life. So if you see what I'm saying, it's actually taking these actions that's keeping me going more really than anything else. And I've had proof come back where people have commented and said, this was really helpful. I can really relate to this. And that is another thing that really adds to that. But it's not necessarily motivation because I don't always feel motivated. And if I only did things when I felt motivated, it just, there would be no consistency at all. So I'm going to give you a few tips on how this applies to real life. Okay. And the first is going to be to lower the bar. So you may have this like really big, lofty goal, and that's awesome, but you want to break it down into smaller chunks. And that's what those action goals are that I'm always talking about. So, for example, if you want to be a writer, maybe you want to start a blog. We'll start with that. So obviously that takes a lot of writing. There might be some technical stuff that you need to learn. Maybe you need to hire somebody to set it up. But those are the actions that you need to take. So you can just like make a list of all the smaller actions and devise a manageable plan. Maybe you have a full-time job like I do, and maybe you don't really have a lot of free time to do this, and you can schedule it. I do a lot of my content like early in the morning after my run or my workout and before work starts, or maybe after work starts, or maybe, if you get a break or a lunch break or something like that. But figuring out when you can take these actions and when, like how often. So maybe you're going to work on your blog 2 days a week. Like maybe you'll take one day to just like write a rough draft, and then you'll take another day to go back and edit and publish it. And that's something that might be very manageable for you. Maybe it's not. Maybe you only publish once every 2 weeks or once a month, but that's okay. Figuring out what is manageable for you, creating those action goals and a schedule so that you know exactly what and when you'll be doing these things, it makes things much easier, much more manageable, and you're actually doing the thing. So maybe you're not like some famous content creator, but you have a body of work that you're building and that you can go back to and continue to build on. So that's going to tie into my second tip, which is to focus on those action goals and not the outcome goals. So if your goal is to maybe build a blog big enough that you can actually make money off of it, and maybe either build a part-time income, a full-time income, that may be possible, but you also need to sort of temper your expectations and know that you don't necessarily have control over any of that. What you have control over are the actions. And so that's why I always urge people to focus on the action goals, because you have almost total control over that. Now, you might not have control over certain variables, like maybe you get sick, or maybe your kid gets sick, maybe your power goes out or your internet goes out or something like that, so you're not able to publish on the normal day that you do. There are lots of different things that can happen, but consistency doesn't mean perfection. Consistency means that you do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, with some flexibility. So maybe normally you like to publish your blog post on Thursday, but life got in the way, or you were having tech issues or whatever, so you post on Friday instead. No big deal. No one's really going to care. It's just not that big of a deal. But you have control over manipulating that schedule and figuring out when you can take that action. That's why I really like action goals, because you do have control over that. And so every time you check off an action that you have planned, it's like one step closer and you're building that momentum. But if you're only focused on the outcome and you work on this blog for a month and you're not getting a lot of traction, you're not getting a lot of viewers, you're not making any money yet, well, then obviously, if that's all you're focused on, you're going to get discouraged really quickly. On the flip side, if you start really focusing on those action goals and you see like, wow, I've posted, you know, let's say you're posting once a week. So in a month you could post 4 or 5 blog articles. That's pretty good. You're building momentum, and as the months go on, you're going to build more and more and more, and that's going to feel really good if you're focused on those action goals. My third tip for overcoming any type of issues with motivation is to stop overthinking everything. And I'm smiling about that because I'm a classic overthinker. I've done it for years. I've used this example before where with my running, before I started running and really before I started exercising at all, I used to think about it. I would think about the types of exercise I would want to do. I would think about the types of races I would want to run. I would journal about it. I would build vision boards around it. I did everything except for exercising and running. And obviously that's not helping things at all. I mean, it's great to think about it and to have goals, but you have to take it one step further and actually do the thing. So, a lot of people tend to get in that, they call it like analysis paralysis, where they're just trying to like figure everything out without taking any action. But if you're doing that, you're going to end up just being stuck. You're going to be like me, thinking about running, not running. And that's not what makes you into whatever the thing is that you want to become. It's taking those actions that actually is going to help you get clarity, because you might not know. I mean, there are things that you could encounter that you don't even know about until you encounter them. And so, again, with that blogging example, maybe you're finding that you write pretty quickly and you're able to publish really quickly. So maybe you only need one day to work on that blog, and maybe that means that you can write 2 articles a week instead of one. Like, see what I mean? Like, there are different variables that you may not even know about until you've actually started taking action. So that's sort of where the clarity comes from. You can think about things, but a lot of times, like the doubt creeps in and you start thinking about worst case scenario instead of actually doing the things that you're thinking about. And that's really where you're going to start to build that momentum and that self trust and that confidence, all of the things that are really essential to working towards any goal. The next tip is going to be building routines around those action goals, which are basically habits. And when you create those habits, it's like you don't even need to negotiate with yourself anymore. So, a few examples for me: running, I have a set schedule 3 times a week: Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, sometimes Sunday. It just depends on what the weekend looks like. But again, that's that flexibility. I film all of my content on Tuesdays. I know every Tuesday that I need to make sure that I look camera ready, basically, and that I have everything ready to go so that I can, make my videos and create my content for the week. So that means making sure that my microphone is charged, making sure that my phone is charged, making sure that I have created an outline so that I can actually put together a cohesive video. And although it may seem like I'm rambling aimlessly, there is some structure to the videos that I create. So I have all of that ready and I have a plan that I follow every single week for all of this content. So those are the things that really help to keep me on track. And again, with the blog example, if you're building a blog, you might want to set up, okay, well, on this day, I outline my blog. On this day, I write my blog. On this day, I edit it and I publish it. And then, on maybe over the weekend or whatever, I post my blog posts to Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. But you have a schedule. And so it just makes it so much easier because you're not thinking like, oh, when should I do that? When am I going to fit it in? How am I going to have time? You look at that ahead of time, you create that schedule, and then you stick to it. Now, again, sometimes things happen and sometimes you have to adjust, but you plan for that as well. I always have a contingency plan. If I can't get my run in on this day, then I'll do it on this day. If I can't do a long run on Saturday, then I do it on Sunday. I figure it out. And there may be weeks where it's just not possible. Maybe you go on vacation, maybe you have family visiting, maybe you have a really crazy work schedule or something like that. And that's okay. Again, we're looking for consistency, not perfection. But having that all mapped out and scheduled out for you is going to save you a lot of like inner turmoil, negotiating with yourself, thinking about things. You're just going to do it. And then the last tip I'm going to give you is to just let go of any expectations of perfection, because you don't have to have everything figured out before you start. Now, I've had YouTube channels in the past, but I've never really been super consistent with them. This channel is definitely the most consistent I've been. And I know I owe that to having a schedule and scheduling everything out. But if I had waited until I figured everything out and had everything perfect, then I probably wouldn't have the body of work that I have now. And I'm only not even 6 months in. I think I'm like maybe 4.5, 5 months, something like that. And so it's really helped to have that schedule to follow because I'm not, like I said before, negotiating with myself, but I'm also learning as I go. And that's really going to be key for you. Like, we don't know everything. We're not going to figure everything out. You figure it out as you go and you get better. If you go back and look at my first few videos, I mean, I know that I'm not like super polished even now, but I think my system and the packaging that I, put around these videos, the editing and the thumbnails and all of that stuff look much better than they did when I first started out because I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't really, but my focus is really getting my messages across and, and publishing something every week. And that's what I'm doing. So it's just really important to remember that you're not going to be perfect. If you're, starting something new, you might have to blend a mix of doing the thing and learning, or you might just do the thing and learn as you're doing. There are sometimes things that I need to look up if I'm not sure how to do something, usually like tech related. You might have to do that and you might have to schedule that into your process. But if you're just waiting until you know everything before you start, you're probably never going to start because there's no way you can ever possibly know every single thing about whatever the goal is that you're working towards. I used to see this a lot when I was a health coach because I had a lot of women who would come to me, many of them upset, many of them in tears that they wanted to improve their health. Maybe they wanted to start an exercise routine or they needed guidance in eating better. But then as we would actually, like we would talk about it, but then actually when it got down to doing the thing, then it was, well, I don't really have time right now, or, I'm going to wait until school starts again, or I'm going to wait until after the holidays, or I'm going to wait until I have a better job, or this or that. And it was so frustrating. And not because I wanted to make money off of those people, but because I saw the potential that they had. And I saw that they were just like cutting themselves off before they even got started because they were overthinking things. They were waiting for the motivation. They were waiting for the perfect circumstances, and that will never exist. So, if that sounds familiar, I would love for you to kind of like reframe this whole idea of motivation because it's not really what should lead you. It's what should follow. So, if there's something that you want to do, figure out an action plan and do it. Create those small steps that are going to get you there and then focus on those small steps. And even I'm telling you guys, like even the smallest action is going to help you to feel just one step closer to that. Just for example, this morning I had just a short run, just a 3 mile run. And, I got out there. I actually felt pretty motivated, but then once I got out there, it was particularly hot this morning. And I went out fairly early. It was like 7:30, but it was hot and we had like 89% humidity. So I mean, I got like a few steps into the run and I was like, oh my God, I'm dying. But it's Tuesday, it's my running day. And so I just kept going as best as I could. And when I got back and I looked at like my time and stuff, I actually had a pretty good pace this morning and I was surprised by that, but it built me up so much because I was like, wow, like even though it was not ideal conditions, I felt okay and I performed pretty well. And so that gave me a really big boost of confidence. And I mean, we're talking a matter of like, I think it was like 35 minutes that I was out there running today. So, I mean, not a huge commitment and, not a huge amount of time. And it really did help to boost my confidence. And those are the little wins that you want to look for because that's what's going to help to carry you through. So that next time when I step outside and it's crazy hot and humid, I can remember, you know what? I've done this before and I did it fairly well. So I can do it again. And that really is going to help me, move forward. I do it all the time. I remember things that I've done in the past and I use them to help carry me forward. And you can do the same thing, but only if you're not waiting for that motivation to carry you. So, a really simple starting point for you is just to pick something that you've been wanting to do and make it smaller. So again, going back to that blog example, if you want to start a blog, and again, this can apply to anything, but I'm just using this to illustrate my point. So you want to start a blog, you would love to earn some income off of it, but that's the big goal. Make it smaller, set the blog up, learn what you need to learn to set it up, or hire somebody to do it, figure it out. And then you start writing your articles and you figure out what's manageable for you. Okay. Now, we're not talking about building this big, huge website or anything like that. We're talking about writing an article maybe once a week or whatever it is that works for you. So figure that out. And then as you do that consistently, you're getting closer and closer and closer. And I mean, to be perfectly honest, you may never achieve that big goal, but you've created something that is all yours. And that's something to be really, really proud of. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it might not. And you have to learn to be okay with that. You have to learn to see these smaller action goals every time you check one off as an accomplishment for yourself. You're doing something that you've never done before, and you're building momentum, you're building consistency, and that's going to help to keep you motivated. So, to wrap up this video, I just really want people to understand that you should not be waiting for motivation to start something that you want to do. The motivation is going to ebb and flow, and what you really need to do is just build some consistency, and that is what is going to help to propel you forward, not feeling like it. If you wait to feel like it, you might be waiting a while. And it's not going to help to move you forward. It's going to keep you stuck. So if you have something that you want to work on, again, break it down into smaller chunks, break it into action goals, schedule them, and then follow the schedule as closely as you possibly can with some flexibility. And this applies to so many different types of goals. It can apply to, blogging, building a business, running, weightlifting, maybe if you have weight loss goals, like there are all kinds of big goals, but you have to learn how to like chunk them into smaller goals. If that's something you need help with, I'm always here. I'm happy to respond to your comments and maybe help you brainstorm some ideas. I do that for people all the time, and I'm happy to do that for you. But please also make sure that you're following this page. I post weekly videos. A lot of it is tied into action goals and just overall growth, because I really feel like this is the time to do it. Women in midlife have a unique opportunity to reinvent themselves if they want to, and we can often feel stuck in our lives. And I really do hope that this helped to inspire you to take action so that you can find your own motivation.